G'day folks and welcome to Australian UFO Sightings official podcast. I'm your host Anthony Goodall and you're listening to Encounters Down Under. Here we invite guests on the show to tell us about their encounters with aliens and UFOs, where most of our episodes were streamed live from our Facebook page, which gave listeners the opportunity to ask questions to our guests regarding their encounter. If you have had an encounter and would like to be a guest on the show, please get in touch with us. You can send us a message through our Facebook page, Encounters Down Under, or send us an email at australianUFOsightings@outlook.com.au. Be sure to join us on Facebook and share with your friends and family to help us grow, and hopefully encourage others to come forward with their encounter. If you're an iTunes listener and a fan of the show, why not give us that 5-star rating and review, and you could have your review featured on the podcast. But enough of that, let's get into what you've been waiting for. So kick back, relax with your favourite beverage, and enjoy the show. G'day folks and welcome back to another episode of Encounters Down Under. Kade Moir from the Believe Paranormal and UFO podcast joins me on this episode to talk about his show and discuss the possible connections between the paranormal, alien and Yowie phenomena. So please welcome to the show, Kade. G'day Kade, how you going mate?
Very good, Anthony. How are you, mate?
Going good, mate. Mate, good having you on here, mate. It's like absolutely fantastic. Like we had this bit of a live chat there a couple of years ago there talking about this sort of stuff there, and for those who don't know, Kay is sort of one who inspired me to go and get into the whole podcasting sort of stuff that I was and ahhing about it, going, look, I'm not really sure if I'm the right guy for this sort of stuff. And he's like, look, just do it. If it works, it works. You know, if not, you can just always just toss it aside and try something else. But yeah, look, mate, it's all to you. Thanks to you, mate, for making this thing actually a reality, really.
Mate, I think you're born for it. There's certain people who are good at talking to other people. I'm probably not one of those people, but you most definitely are. And man, you do a fantastic job.
You're too kind. I think I'm doing a horrible job myself. I can't explain stuff to save me life. As soon as I get in trouble, I'll be like, digging myself my own grave here. But look, mate. For those who don't know, Kade's the host of the Believe Paranormal and UFO Radio podcast. If you haven't already checked it out. You can check him out on the Apple, well, it's all the major podcast streaming apps, isn't it?
It's everywhere. Yep.
That's cool. I think you're also on YouTube as well, aren't you? You're doing most of your live streams there?
Yeah, so actually I upload to YouTube, and it was a suggestion from one of my listeners and said, hey, you should be a little more accommodating to the deaf. And I was like, okay, cool, that's great, but I don't know how to do that. And they said, upload your podcast to YouTube and it'll auto caption it for you.
Yep.
So that's why I do that.
That's awesome. I think Facebook's even sort of caught up on that as well, where that sort of capturing the dialogue and that.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is good. So that's awesome for people who can't really hear too well, or they can see our beautiful faces at least. But at least they'll be able to see that best. But anyway, look, let's get into the this whole topic here while we're here. So you've been doing this for what, 3-4 years now with your podcast?
Yeah, about 3 years. So, very much like yourself, I talk to people who have had encounters with the strange and the unknown. I probably my scope's probably a little bit more broader than what yours is. Yeah. But, I'll talk to people who have had Yowie encounters, UFO encounters, alien encounters, paranormal encounters, and it kind of really does cover anything that's unusual. I am 100% down to talk to you.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's awesome. Because when you sort of look at this sort of stuff, it is sort of does cross into each other at some point there, doesn't it? It's sort of related in a sense.
Oh, absolutely. Especially when it comes to the UFO phenomenon, there is that it's something I've probably said this 100 times on my show, but a friend of mine, Damien Ott, came on the show. Massive fan of the bloke, very lovely. And he really said something on there that made me kind of question basically everything when it comes to all the phenomena. And he said the biggest thing when it comes to the UFO phenomenon is the human element of it, because our perception of it is what defines what we're experiencing, essentially. And I'm paraphrasing him, but he basically put it into the perspective of that. If you see an orb in the sky, that's a UFO. But if you see an orb in your house, that's a spirit or a ghost or something paranormal. And the only thing that's really deciding where that fits in our own world is a person experiencing it.
Yeah, because it is strange, isn't it? A lot of people will sort of. I even had reports there where people are trying to say something in their house is a UFO with it flying. Even security cameras for in-house security cameras and stuff like that. You know, you got the well, I'll call them dust particles, but people want to claim them as spirits or ghosts or something of that aspect. Yeah,
I'll
anyway,
bite my tongue.
yeah, I know it's a little bit frustrating at times. Like, and that's another thing when you come into we're partially investigators. Like when it comes to this sort of stuff, like we're listening to people's stories and their encounters and such, and we're sort of like doing our own sort of investigations during this. Like it's a research in a sense, and for us, we sort of like we're open minded to the whole idea, but we keep our feet grounded to the whole thing and make sure things aren't too out there. If you know what I mean.
Oh, 100%. Because the thing is, it's if you go out there and you believe everything that you hear, it will really discredit the people who have come onto your show or my show
Yeah.
or anyone who does a show like ours and had a genuine encounter. Because the reality is there's people out there who will be making it up. That's just how some people are. Or some people may have just completely misunderstood their situation and thought, hey, that satellite is the scariest UFO in my life. Changed my world perspective because I saw it, but at the end of the day, it was probably just a satellite.
Yeah, I get that a lot too. Like where, especially people trying to take photos or videos of something in the sky, and of course, cameras have the worst quality of something that's in the distance there, or even if it's dark situation, nighttime, people try and film it, and it gives no justice to the whole situation of what they're trying to give you. And it's like, look, I understand what you're trying to get through, but your video is just giving no justice to what you're seeing, or there is an explanation to it, and they don't want to believe what your explanation is to it because they're in their own what would you call it? I suppose like their own. I don't know what do you call it now. You know, their own. Oh, I'm lost here now. You know.
Well,
Yeah.
they've essentially like self-classified what happened
Yeah,
to them,
that's
and they just want to come to you to say, yeah, no, this is definitely what happened, and go and live your life telling everyone that you saw what you saw. And that's cool. Like if that's
yeah,
what people want to do, like that, it's not hurting anyone. But you can kind of see the hate that can really make online, especially in groups and things like that.
yeah,
I envy you who has like the biggest Facebook group in Australia when it comes to UFOs. It would just be a bit of a nightmare kind of sifting through that and either like making people feel like they've been let down or you don't believe them, when really that's not the case. You're just kind of actually trying to help them understand what they experienced.
yeah. And I cop a lot of flack from it. A lot of hate and all sorts of stuff. And it's like because I'm not trying to discredit anyone's situation or their sighting. It's just more or less to try and help educate people of the identifications and the understandings of what is actually out there. Because there's so many misidentifications. Like I've said this before, like maybe 5% of them are probably might be UFO or they're just unexplainable, but the rest of them can be explained in some sort of sense. Like, cause like especially like technology today, like we've got Starlink going over, we've got drones flying around everywhere, and people don't understand these things that are flying over at the time, or even like seeing the space station, or people still mistaking Venus of all things in the horizon, and it's trying to claim it as a UFO. And it's like, well, look, come on, guys, like you need to get a bit of sense about yours, and do a bit of your own investigation to try and figure out what it is that you might have seen to try and justify if it is actually a UFO or not. Like unless you see it do something so, like phenomenal, crazy, like just defies all of our sort of known technology or logic, then sure, you got something that's credible, but the likelihood of you capturing that is like none.
And that's it. Like you kind of hit the nail on the head there earlier. With the whole camera thing, you know, the sensors in our cameras, they're minuscule. They're like a quarter of an inch. They're super tiny. So when you point it up to the night sky, you're not going to capture anything. And does that do a complete injustice to what that person may be encountering? 100%. But it could also just be the final nail in the coffin of kind of cementing, hey, no, this is probably just something to really worry about.
Yeah, like I've seen some there. Like there seems to be a lot of these orange orbs starting to hover around at the moment there, and I'm trying to like figure out if it's a UFO or if it might be a drone with a light on or something like. Because it is weird. Like people do mistaken Chinese lanterns, but they've sort of been sitting there for a while, and like I'm going through something that I've seen recently, and someone's gone, look, what do you think this is? I'm like, I have absolutely no idea because I'm not sure at this point. It doesn't mean it's a UFO. And I'm not going to say it's a UFO or alien craft or any means. I'm just going to say I have no idea how I can explain this at this
You know,
point.
that's really interesting because I'm getting more and more people contacting me about orange lights as well, because it used to just be red, yellow, white, blue, and it would be years since I heard an orange UFO, and it just seems like more and more people are seeing orange UFOs. I don't know if that's a thing. I don't know, is that like a rare sighting if it comes, like if you could even, classify that. But yeah, I'm kind of getting the same thing. Like more people are seeing more orange UFOs, and that's a really good point that you bring up. Like, is there something, a little bit more terrestrial, like a drone or something like that?
Yeah, and that's the other thing. So like a lot of people like bringing all this new technology out. Like you would have seen like LED kites and all sorts of stuff flying around. They look cool, and then you've got the well, just drones in general. I don't know what model of drones are coming out these days that might have the big orange light on there, but usually for me with a common drone, they have a strobe light on them, or you can see the red and the green for the front and rear of the drone. And I think when they get to a certain height, the red and greens might switch off. I can't quite remember, but then you get the white strobe light that'll sort of flash to sort of
Oh,
when it
okay.
gets to a certain height. Don't quote me on that. I'm not an expert on drones, but just from things I've seen in the past of these things sort of happening to try and explain away like the because I've got to do my homework. I've got to try and look into things here and try and justify what things are and explain things, and I'll try and explain things to the best of my ability that I can do to try and give you an explanation to why it's not a UFO. Because if it was a UFO, then I'll be like, still like, I've got no idea. I can't explain a UFO because we don't have that much information on. But look, I know you've had your own sort of experience there as well. Like, do you want to tell us about your experiences that you've had?
Yeah, so I've actually had a couple of experiences with, I would call two a UFO, and one something just so completely weird. And I haven't actually told a lot of people that one. So there'll be a little hot tip,
Oh
hot
yeah.
scoop. So my first UFO encounter was like just the most mundane experience in the world, and I wish I could say I was doing something way cooler than what I was doing. But this is the thing with UFOs, is like they don't give a crap about you. They're just gonna, if they show up, they show up. Like they're not gonna really put on a show for you. So anyway, I was out in my backyard just hanging up the washing. That's all I was doing. 8 o'clock at night, hanging the washing up. And as I'm like putting the clothes on the line, I see this light just zigzag across the sky over the whole horizon within 2 seconds. And I was just like, huh, that obviously couldn't be anything man-made, because that thing was hauling, and it would have covered hundreds of kilometers in seconds. And with the zigzagging motion, it would have been maybe a K between the zags. So it was fairly aggressive movements, and it was just gone. No sound, nothing.
That's cool.
And something moving that fast would have definitely been making a sonic boom or something like that.
Yeah, definitely with some sort of resistance at least from our atmospherics and stuff like that. And that's the thing I don't understand with these things too. Like, what is the whole idea behind these zigzag things? People claim and seeing these things zigzag, and it's like, what is the purpose of that? Like, people are saying, oh, it's just to get our attention. And that it's like, well, why aren't they doing it all the time? Because everyone wants to see these things happen, But
Yeah.
it just seems to happen to certain people, and they're lucky enough to go and see that. And it's like, I can't understand. I can't get my head around what the whole purpose of this whole zigzag thing is. It annoys me.
I don't know. Like maybe, like this is going to sound dumb, but like maybe there is a genuine resistance to how far these craft can go in one direction without, I don't know, gravity affecting it. So maybe they have to change that direction to relieve the pressure or something that may be building up over that distance.
Yeah, it sort of seems like a pretty logical sort of idea. Yeah, I sort of get the
Yeah, I've been
idea of
thinking
like,
about that for all of like 10 seconds.
yeah. No, look, it sounds pretty like anything's possible at this point. Like I've sort of got the idea of like those torch charges. Yeah, like that looks a bit weird, but you got those little charges there. You got to do that sort of shit with.
Yeah, absolutely.
They could be like charging up their engines for you, or using the recoils to sort of charge themselves up.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it could even be something like so far out. Like I don't know how many different podcasts that you listen to, Anthony, but I listen to this podcast called Theories of Everything, and it is like it's so extremely beyond my level of understanding because it's like very, very high level thinking people go onto this, and I'm a very, very simple man.
High intelligence sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think it's a bit above me then too.
But something that's really interesting about it is they talk about UFOs a lot on there, and they talk about them in a very serious matter, and they bring on a lot of different experts in different areas of like mathematics and physics and things like that. And one of the things, one of the guests that went onto that podcast said something that was it kind of changed that whole perspective of UFOs for me, because I'm a really strong believer that these craft are interdimensional. I don't necessarily think like these are aliens coming like from outer space. One, that would be cool if that is the case, but I think the interdimensional is probably that's the best working theory that I've got. And they said that this person kind of suggested that the reason that you see these things kind of maneuver in more unique ways than what you see here on Earth, like they don't produce any like heat signatures or anything like that. And they said that it wouldn't be out of the possibility that the engine or whatever moves this craft is in a different dimension.
So it's
So
beyond our
essentially,
perspective.
absolutely. So we just don't see it. We don't understand how that moves. Like in all reality, to really simplify it, it could be like let's get like silly to the point where it's an easy thing to visually understand. Is like a ski cable run. We can see the string or the wires, sorry,
Yep.
that these carts are going up on. But if the wire was in a different dimension or something that we couldn't see, those carts would just look like they're floating, doing their thing, moving without any assistance.
Yeah, well, if you go on perspective there, depending on how far away you are from it, you won't be able to see the cable. You'll just see the carts going up.
Yeah, yeah,
So same sort
exactly.
of concept, yeah. No,
Yeah,
that
so
actually makes a lot of sense.
yeah, so when I heard that, I was like, oh my gosh, this there could just be they could be honestly something gigantic attached to these UFOs that we just literally can't see because they're just not in our dimension. And for me, that was like reality warping.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That's a really cool concept. It sort of does make a lot of sense. Like I've always like sort of gone with the concept there of our eyes can only see a certain amount of color, and they can use the colors that we can't see to their advantage to sort of hide it behind it or camouflage themselves basically.
Yeah,
So it's one of those sort of concepts you can throw into it, and like I'm sort of on the page there of being interdimensional. So because it sort of makes sense there and lines up with the paranormal and then sort of the cryptid sort of side of things as well, on how they can seem to maneuver around or travel. They seem to appear and then disappear and all sort of concept. Or another one is like there have always been terrestrial that have been advanced civilizations. I'm sort of diving a little bit down that at the moment there with some of the people I've been talking to, and a lot of it does sort of lean towards like we've got a lot of history that's happened throughout this world. It's been lost thanks to our uh, our sort of civilization, our current civilization, wiping out all history there, and like there's things getting found and that sort of don't make sense that could have been part of the civilization. It, I don't know how true some of these are because like hoaxes are out there. Facebook people just go on there to try and make money out of their ads and commissions and sort of stuff. So whatever weird wacky shit you can put on there, they're gonna put it up there so to get people looking at it and get their revenue. So it's sort of like it does make you wonder like how much of this is actually true. Because like I don't know if you've seen like the that weird little computer or Enigma looking thing there was found probably maybe 10 years ago I think it was, and scientists still can't figure out how to use it to this day.
oh really?
Yeah, it doesn't take electricity. I don't think it's sort of like it's like a steampunk kind of computer or a typewriter kind of thing. It's a really weird looking thing, and that doesn't make sense at all. But yeah, it's mind-boggling. And that's just one of the things. That's one of the things that they've found, and also like a some rock with a couple of portholes in there, like power plug sort of thing,
Oh really?
made of
Wow.
rock and with a copper sort of lining. So I don't know. It's strange, and just it just makes you wonder like how true are some of these things to if they are real, what century is this, or was there an advanced civilization behind us? Well, sorry, I should say in front of us, or no, behind us. Yeah, but yeah, it makes you wonder. There's like so many different wormholes you can go down, like different roads that sort of go. Well, it could be this, it could be that, or it could be this. And which one do you take to
Totally.
go and sort of get a better idea of what is all this is?
And you know what? I think that's the thing that is the best thing about the UFO phenomenon is that everyone can have an opinion, an angle, or a perspective on it. And no one is technically wrong when it comes to it at the end of the day. And I don't care what anyone says. Like, there's no UFO experts out there.
Yeah.
Like, they just don't exist. It's like Bigfoot experts and ghost experts, and who defines an expert at the end of the day? Probably themselves. And
Me right here.
how much credit? Yeah, exactly.
You look at
like
my Facebook page. I'll claim myself as an expert.
I'm the expert of wearing Believe t-shirts. Take it from me. But that's really the reality when it comes to this thing. So, if you are with the right crowd, you can actually have fantastic conversations about this type of stuff and have a fantastic night, like just talking about the most surreal things, and it's just fun because who knows what these things are at the end of the day.
That's right. And that's the biggest question of them all, isn't it? Like, what are they? Who are they? Where are they from? That's the most intriguing part of the whole thing. That's the whole mystery behind why we do this, to try and figure out what these things are. And like as you're saying, people claiming, the experts, like I'm talking about like big honchos, they'll claim something that sounds so ridiculous. And it's sort of like, well, where do you get this information from, sort of thing? You're like, to go and be able to claim that. Because they'll to them they're claiming this as the truth, the reality of what is out there. And I know, like, us feel like, I know we're objective and all sorts of stuff, and it's like, well, can you claim that to be the truth when there's only like maybe a handful of people who might know that's the truth, whereas the rest of the world will just go, nah, it's not. You're full of shit. You're a crazy person. Go and get yourself suited up in a crazy room. It's as sad as it sounds. I know it's horrible, but in the end, we just don't know. It's sad.
Oh, 100%. And I'm with you on that, Anthony, because there's a massive problem in the whole like UFO world is that not enough people want to say, I'm not educated enough about this to give you my opinion or give you my thoughts on it, because not everything that everyone says is going to be right.
Yeah.
That's where these experts are going wrong. Oh, so-called experts. I think a lot more people do have to stand up and say, look, I just do not know enough about the topic to give you any opinions on it yet.
Yeah, I think that's the thing too. Like, no one's going to have the right answers for anyone. Like, you can try and ask every person in the world, go, what's your thoughts on the UFO thing? But I think the biggest thing is, though, like, there's something about it that has a common occurrence with the UFOs and stuff like that. People are getting abducted, and people are having experiences there where they are getting set up into the crafts and such like that. And I think that's like the closest thing we have to the truth of anything that's there. Like, whether these people that are the experts are talking to people, or they're just doing their own research and just following their own path. And that's the other thing too. Like, they could be doing their own research and warping it to their own agenda. I'm just throwing it out there, and I'm probably going to be getting a bit of flack for this one too, but it's up to the person's own perspective who wants to go and read into it or listen to it about people's research and such like that. But for me, I feel the more genuine sort of reality on this whole concept of paranormal, UFO, and all sorts of stuff is from the people who are experiencing these things. Because you're not going to get it from the government or anything like that. You're not going to get it from any higher society person or something like, in that regard. Everything's going to be from the lower class like us, doing this sort of stuff and bringing people onto the show, listening to their experiences. That's the reality there. That's the juicy stuff. That's where the stories that no one else really hears unless you actually bring it up at a dinner party or a barbecue or around the campfire. They bring up spooky stories. That's where you're going to hear these stories. And
absolutely. And you're 100% right. Like, the UFO phenomenon is the coolest thing in the world to talk about. But if you have anything other than like just that brief sighting, like it enters that real taboo world of, oh, okay, you've stepped over the line now. And if you had a close encounter with something like that, or a actual physical encounter with a potential being, you've crossed that line of, oh yeah, UFOs are kind of cool, to, okay, no, you've kind of gone into crazy town a little bit, which we know isn't really the case, because everyone's encounters are so different. They're so personal. Their perspective on what they're encountering is their own. So, it's really difficult for other people to say, hey, what you experienced is wrong, because it's like, hey, buddy, you weren't there.
Yeah, that's the thing too. Like, people gotta understand that too. Like, they're not there, and you can't really judge that person's experiences just because of their story. Like you said, like, they weren't there. It's one of those things that people need to understand. These things are real. They are out there, and these things are happening.
But it is a double-edged sword, Anthony, because you also can't just believe everyone that comes forward and said, hey, they took me on a mothership and we took a cruise around the galaxy, because there's give and take at the end of the day. And you want to believe everyone, but people do have to be vetted, because there's people do go down rabbit holes. The UFO community is full of people who have gone too far down rabbit holes, and will believe every little sparkle in the sky is something trying to talk to them.
Yeah,
And
or a lens flare.
oh, you must be looking in my email inbox, mate, because I get so many of them, and they all seem to get very angry.
Yeah,
about
don't they? What?
my thoughts on it.
Yeah, look, I know, and like, I understand everyone wants to have that genuine capture and all sorts of stuff. Like, I would love to be able to see that genuine capture of, like, undeniable evidence of an object sitting there, like, it's got little aliens there going, "Hey, yeah, you going?" I'd love to see that, and not being CGI, but but unfortunately, yeah, like, there's just so much out there that people don't understand and that can be misidentified. But yeah, mate, we missed your second encounter that we got sidetracked.
Okay, so my second encounter was an encounter, and this is going to sound ridiculous, but it was an encounter I forgot I had. And it only got brought, like the memory came back to me when I was interviewing Ross Coulthard. And we were literally talking about how there's this almost funny effect of not remembering UFO encounters. And him talking about that triggered this memory. And essentially, I used to live up the top of a very tall mountain, and all I could see was basically mountainscape where I lived. And there was this light way, way, way away above the mountains. And I was outside taking my dog to the loo, and all of a sudden, all these little lights started to show up around this other light, and just started to slowly spin around it and went back into it. And that was it. That's all I can remember of that encounter. I can't remember if it shot off. I can't remember if it did anything like that. And I know it sounds ridiculous and I know it sounds silly, but I just can't remember anything else of it. And the crazy thing is, I encountered this with my brother. He doesn't remember it either.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a strange thing. So do you recall if you, like, had any missing time at all during that as well?
No, definitely not. Definitely not, because my wife would have been like, what the hell are you doing out the front for like hours? No, yeah. So yeah, there was definitely no missing time, but it was just kind of like this thing of, no, he didn't remember it happening. And yeah, only talking with Ross about that subject and that kind of topic, it really jogged that memory. And I have a video recording of the interview I did with Ross, and I remember going back and watching it, and there was like this look of like, holy shit on my face. Like, he's talking about you. You've encountered this phenomena that he's talking about where you don't remember it happening. And it was an absolute mind spin, because it sounds amazing, but I just don't remember what happened.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. Like, there's a lot of trigger points in this too. Like, obviously, people when they listen to these podcasts, they've obviously got some sort of curiosity with this sort of world, and some people actually do get that trigger there, going, "Holy shit, I remember something like this happening," and then they sort of like start trying to revert back and trying to remember it. And next thing they're going down the wormhole of the whole UFO and paranormal aspect of things. It's kind of cool. But
Yeah.
I've obviously you would have heard of regressional therapy. People going on
Yes.
hypnosis there and trying to remember this sort of stuff. I had um someone on the podcast there, Craig Harry. He's a hypnotherapist there. He's done a bit of regressional therapy, and he's had people in there who didn't even know they had encounters. And it's like, where, like, how and why, like, they forget something that could be so life changing to go and, like, just be gone. Like, how does that happen? Like, it's like yours wasn't even like as amazing as it wasn't anything fully interactive. There was no physical contact or anything like that, and yet you still sort of, or your brother, sorry, and yourself just forget a bit all about it. And it's like, how?
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a surreal thing, and I don't understand it. So whenever I talk about it, it doesn't make sense to me. So I don't expect anyone else to understand it or believe it, if that makes sense, because it's just like this surreal thing that doesn't like make sense. It doesn't play by any rules or anything like that. So yeah.
Yeah, because like, I know the brain goes into like a protection mode there, and it'll you know save itself from some weird ass or horrible memory, regression it, and yeah, that sort of thing there just doesn't make any sense at all to me. And yeah, I don't know, it's mind boggling. But so look, going through your podcast there, the people you've sort of spoken to, like, what would have to be like the most craziest, or I suppose out there, but like, I don't know, the most mind boggling to you, like, what would you call, in which aspect, I suppose, in which genre?
Yeah, so I love the UFO topic like immensely. I think it's so many encounters are so alike but so different. I love finding that common thread between UFO encounters and like kind of saying, yes, fantastic. You're like, sweet, you've seen like one of the five observables and kind of stuff like that. Because those are the first kind of questions that I ask. Because you want to make sure, hey, what you're seeing fits the criteria of a UFO, and then diving in on how it affects them personally and on the emotional level, because that's where people connect better with stories. So that's why I focus the podcast in that sense, because everyone can tell a great scary story, but at the end of the day, I actually care about how it affects the person on a more intimate level, because for me I find that more fascinating than someone saying I saw the scariest shit of my life and I'm never going outside again because of it. That doesn't really do anything for me, and it doesn't do anything for people actually listening to the podcast, because I want people to come on the show that tells stories that help people rather than scare people, because I think that's more important. Because you want a scary story, go pick up a Stephen King book type of thing.
Yeah.
But in saying that, in a long roundabout way of like kind of answering your question, season 1, episode 4, UFOs in country Victoria, is an absolute standout when it comes to UFO encounters on the podcast. Because one, it was one of the first ones that I ever got to talk to someone about, and it is absolutely next level. I believe the lady's name was Cheryl, and she saw this UFO landing on a hillside in the country part of Victoria, but if you couldn't tell by the name of the episode. And her and her whole family saw it. So, like, this is a multiple person encounter. They were terrified. It was kind of the way she explained it was like War of the World tentacle arms were coming out of this thing, not towards them, but like just out of it. And the dad, who was, or her husband, sorry, who was driving the vehicle, was absolutely terrified. He was gunning it down this rickety back road, and she said they should have crashed. Like they were going off the edge of something. They showed up hours down the road with no explanation. of what happened.
Yeah, I remember
First
this
thing,
episode.
yeah, first thing they did, went to the cop station, told their story. They're all scared out of their minds. And sorry, this is a haunted studio. And I swear it is. And I just heard something like a cough next to me. I
Oh,
got
jeez.
chills. Oh man, it is like it's so spooky coming in here. It's great. Um,
It sets the tone.
yeah, absolutely. Um, so yeah, they went to the cop station, and then the next day, the she said it was the Air Force, but basically people came to her, separated her family, put them all in different rooms, and said, "Draw what you saw." And that was it. They just let him go. But it's incredible, like, is that an MIB? Who is that? Like who takes you away? Like who has the authority to just come and take you away, separate you, and then individually question each and one of your family members over something that you may have seen?
Yeah. Didn't they get news coverage as well?
They did. They got nationwide news coverage about the event.
Yeah, it's strange. I've heard stories like, people are seeing like jellyfish kind of like UFOs or beings or
Yep.
something flying around. It sort of makes you wonder, like, is that a jellyfish kind of thing? Like, especially with tentacles coming out and like,
Oh, I didn't even think of that.
yeah, it's weird. Like, I can't grasp the concept of these translucent sort of beings just floating around the sky and all that sort of stuff. And like, I don't know. It feels all Final Fantasy to me, but it's strange. I don't know if you've seen the one where they came in like Final Fantasy. They came in like the year 2000s. I think it was like mid 2000s. I think it was. It was like the first like animated sort of Final Fantasy movie they made, and like they had these like weird sort of creatures, ghostly creatures that come through, and that's sort of like what I can sort of relay them to. But yeah, it's strange, like tentacles sort of things. I can't get my head around that sort of thing. Like, I'm used to hearing crafts landing, all these beings coming through, or people getting pulled out from their beds and into the crafts and whatever. But tentacles coming from a craft it throws a whole new level of concept out there
Yeah,
on what is out there.
absolutely. Yeah. And it's the only time I've ever heard it. Ever. And I've spoken to hundreds of people.
Yeah,
Only
it's
time I've ever
strange.
heard of it.
And it's funny, like I was saying before, there is like a bit of a common ground when it comes to UFOs and abductions and sort of stuff. People are sort of seeing the same kind of beings, or some craft or something like or some missing time of that. But then there's someone that always just throws a curveball and goes, tentacles coming out of a craft or a flying jellyfish or something like that going, and it's like, where's all this coming from? It's like, what is going on out there? Like, are these new sort of beings like coming from somewhere else, or are we becoming like the new center of the universe where people you know these beings are coming in and checking in on us and going, hey, yeah, going, oh, this place is weird, going to do a bit of a tourism sort of thing, and it's weird. Like,
What do you, okay, I'm going to ask you a loaded question. Let's say whether they're interdimensional, from space, from other planets, from within our own Earth, like, why do you think they're coming here?
personally, I think we're an alien ant farm or some sort of farm at least, something like that, and we're just being sort of looked at from a view, like it's like it says it itself, alien ant farm. We're just observed. Um, we could be a reality TV show for the universe. I don't know. It'd be a pretty good show, in all honesty. But yeah, that's probably my best explanation because, otherwise there would be a lot more interaction. I feel like I don't see any reason that if these beings were alien, why couldn't they contact us and we have like a bit of a Star Wars, Star Trek sort of concept where we start flying between worlds and that trading intergalactically and all sorts of stuff. That sort of concept. Um, and that's sort of like you were saying before, like you're not really on the idea of these being aliens from outer space because I feel otherwise they would sort of contact us, and trade and all sorts of stuff and interact at least. Dimensional beings, I can't sort of get a really good grasp on the concept behind that. It's weird, doesn't make much sense. And and it could be just an observational thing. Like we were probably once like a spiritual sort of race, and we were a lot more connected to the aspects of nature and life itself. And maybe during that time, we've sort of lost our way a bit, and these things are sort of trying to slowly get us back into the whole spiritual side of things of the world and look after Mother Nature. Something along that aspect, anyway. And terrestrial, terrestrial beings. Again, it could be like just that same concept of alien ant farm where they're just watching us from afar and just observing how this civilization is going to go this time around. This sort of um, I don't know. It's weird. Are we going to blow ourselves up, or are we going to actually be better than what they did back in the day, sort of thing? Or did they survive from a asteroid or something, like a world-ending sort of thing from outside space, whatever? There's a lot of different concepts, and as we've mentioned before, we can't give a simple answer or a straight answer because everything's just guesswork. But I can't get. To me, it just seems Alien Ant Farm seems to be the best answer because they just seem to be sitting back from afar and just watching.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's a weird one, but yeah,
it is. Yeah. I heard a really, really interesting theory just recently about why these things may be visiting us. And it's you leaned so close to it with what you're saying about like one of the ideas is that maybe it's on a much more spiritual level. Because what if out of all the universes, all the dimensions, humans are the only creature to have an afterlife? Like, what if our subconscious lives on forever and ever and ever?
that'd be cool.
And nothing else in the universe, in the universe or any dimension, is able to experience that. So, essentially, like, to put it bluntly, like, what if humans have some sort of immortality about them, and we just continue on to another existence after this? Because let's get really woo. Like, let's say there's aliens on Mars. Would Mars be haunted with the ghosts of past aliens?
Yeah.
Who knows? But what if they come in here to understand what that part of our lives is?
That's an interesting fact. But then how would that work with them being dimensional beings then? Because like they're on a totally different aspect in the dimensional realm. Are they able to interact with us on that outside plane, on that dimensional plane where our spirit would linger on over to?
Oh shit, Anthony, I'm not dead. I couldn't tell you.
Just put a bit of woo to it,
yeah. But I always love a little bit of woo because I think the paranormal world and the UFO world is a lot more connected than people would probably like to think.
Yeah, definitely, and that's I've leaned more strongly towards the dimensional being aspect of things, because there is something that's going on there where everything like cryptids, UFOs, paranormal stuff. There's something on that side of the realms we can't seem to reach, but yeah, there's something going on there. So, which also leans me towards going back to your podcast there. Now, you get a lot of Yowie interactions, and why do you think that is? Because paranormal and UFO things have been around for years, but there seems to be a big, massive highlight with your podcast where people are seeing Yowies everywhere, or they've had some sort of experience with these Yowies. Like, what's going on there?
Mostly because I love Yowie stories. So I would feature a lot of, I would feature as many Yowie stories as I can, because I think Yowies are the raddest thing in the world. If there was one thing that, if I could confirm exists, like if it's an afterlife, if it's UFOs or aliens, if it was Yowies, I'd pick Yowies like in a heartbeat, because the thought that there's this gigantic mythical monster that's out there that can reportedly do so many different things depending on the people who have encounters with them just exists is the coolest thing, Anthony. Like, you could not find anything cooler on this world than a Yowie, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, they are cool. I can't get over that episode there where old love was on the bike and she's ran into a Yowie there, and she's just seen this whole thing and genitals and all. That was like the highlight of that whole episode. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
geez, you don't get that mentioned very often. We're going like, oh, I'm seeing a bit of crotch action there, but yeah, usually
Yeah.
just people usually getting stalked or rocks and stuff thrown at them. Like, it's a really interesting in the Yowie aspect. So like, where do you feel that they sort of come into the whole paranormal and UFO side of things? Where is their connection to it, do you feel?
Um, to be honest, I don't know if there is a connection. Like I can really only go off the stories that I've been told, things that I've read. I would seem to think that this is I think it's a flesh and blood creature. And if we have to base it off the fact that, let's say hypothetically, like this thing is as old as the crocodiles, like this thing is hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of years old. Like, think of how adept a crocodile is in water. It can take down absolutely anything and you wouldn't even know it's there right next to you. Let's use that same type of mindset when it comes to the Yowie in the bush. A Yowie in the bush is as at home as a crocodile in muddy water. So both masters of their domain. So yeah, I just think the Yowie has been able to totally evolve itself to become the absolute master of its own domain. And I guess us humans, like we're not at the level that that creature would be in that area. So it just has an upper hand on experiences, because that's why we haven't got a dead body, or we know of a dead body, because I've heard plenty of stories of people finding dead bodies and government sweeping them up. How much you believe that is up to you, but yeah, that's why they'll bury their dead. They would be quite educated about what they need to do, because if they live beside the Aboriginals of Australia for 100,000 years, in in peace, so to say, there would be a lot of, I guess, understanding from man on how to avoid them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I was sort of like just thinking then, like, with the Aboriginals and the Yowies sort of living side by side, like, why wouldn't they sort of introduce themselves whilst white men sort of came in to the country, sort of and start civilization settling? But then I sort of like thought in my own head, well, if you see a hairy man come running at you or standing somewhere, you're gonna go, that's a bit weird, like that thing shouldn't be real, or and obviously our human history there proves otherwise. We just go and wipe out whatever doesn't make sense to us, as best we can. And so it sort of makes sense as to why they don't want to go and introduce themselves. But yeah, I sort of answered my own question in my own head then. um, because I feel like there's got to be some point there, like they've got to come out in reality and sort of show themselves. Like I know there will be people out there that do want to hunt them, to try and as trophies, and it's going to happen. It's undeniable. That's going to happen. But I sort of feel like if they sort of did sort of show themselves, and this sort of can sort of relate back to the UFO sort of thing as well. If they showed themselves, and sure, we're gonna have a bit of a freak out to start off with, go, oh wow, if these things are real, and some people go, yeah, see, I told you. But anyway, if they did show themselves, and they'll sort of ease into the whole aspect of our life, and it would just become the norm, instead of this whole got to keep hiding, got to keep away from civilization sort of thing. And then like I don't know, like we'd adapt to it. Surely we'd adapt to it, and
Nah, I
eventually,
disagree. I
no,
disagree. I think the world wouldn't handle it at all. People think they could, but you've got a family.
yep,
Now, let's say you lived on the edge of bushland, and then overnight you find out, hey, there's an 8-foot monster in the bush who could just snatch you up, snatch your children up. How would you feel about that?
obviously you'd be very scared and defensive, I suppose. Yeah,
Multiply that by 22 million Australians.
yeah,
You know, that's that becomes a pretty dangerous situation. And then what happens then? Like do people just go out to the bush and start killing anything that might look like a Yowie? And
Yeah.
there'll be idiots out there, because the world is just full of idiots who would dress up like a Yowie to make fun of it. And what happens there? You might get something disastrous.
Like, oh no, we got shot.
Um, yeah, exactly. And then, there's the massive, massive, massive knock-on effect of how that would affect the real estate prices across Australia, because people would not want to live near any bushland. Um, People would not want to live anywhere remote because of that. Then you would also have like the biggest implication would be the national parks.
Yeah.
Would just use, if you Google how much national parks make in Australia, it is absolute mint. That would disappear. And then not even that, you'd go into the whole mining sector of like, what can you mine? What can't you mine?
Yeah.
So, like the those knock-on effects, like, it sounds cool to say, yeah, I'd love to, the world's ready to see Yowies, but I don't think the economy's ready to see Yowies, and
Yeah.
I don't think families are ready to see Yowies. People as an individual, cool. Look at that big ass monster in the bush. Never going in there again.
Yeah.
But yeah, the world as a whole, would
Yeah.
just become an economic mess because of it.
Yeah, too many repercussions from it, basically. So if you threw
Yeah.
that into the UFO aspect of things, do you think the world would be ready for UFOs?
Probably not. Probably not. Same thing. UFOs are probably worse, because where can you hide from something that potentially can just show up anywhere, either dimensionally or it falls from the sky? We have no control over that. From if these things are, malicious, they seem to be able to do anything that they want within our reality, and we can't do anything to negate that. So again, it's kind of like everyone would be, it'll be on the knife's edge of, okay, everyone would be for themselves, because if you're you can't defend against the sky, you can defend against each other.
Yeah. I think that's the scary part too, like that these things can just do whatever they want, wherever they want, basically. And to me, that is the scariest part of this whole UFO thing.
Yeah.
It absolutely scares the crap out of me, just how easy it is for them just to do whatever the hell they want. And I think a lot of people forget that reality of this. Well, except for the people who experience these things firsthand, like they obviously, it affects them entirely, emotionally, and physically, basically. It's a horrible thing to go through, and like I wouldn't wish it upon anyone. And
100%.
yeah,
I say to people who have come onto my podcast, I just go, I don't know how you live a normal life after what you've experienced. Like, regardless if it's a Yowie, paranormal, or UFO, like you've encountered something that you don't have any control of. There would be this massive victim complex of like, why me? Like, why did this happen to me? And will this ever happen to me again? And I guess the thing is, when it comes to, UFO cases where there's people who, claim that they've been abducted, it's not uncommon to think, well, it's not uncommon for that to be like a lifelong series of events. And then you hear it about it being a generational thing. Like, oh, that happened to my mother. It's happening to me. And oh, great. Now I'm pregnant. Is this going to happen to my kid?
yeah. That's sort of something I've dived down to a little bit of, like, I'll call it a blood contract, or someone wants.
Oh, yeah.
But it sort of, it sounds sinister in a sense, but it's always something in their blood relation that there's something that they want or is curious, or like people are saying like they want their traces of DNA, or something there. There's something of interest in their bloodline anyway, and I can't quite work out what that is. Obviously, it might work better with their DNA to sort of mix together to make these hybrids. I know you had Jane on there as well, talking about hybrids and stuff like that, and it sort of makes sense to try and hybridize. But obviously, different genetics will play a big part when you're trying to make something or clone something. In that sense, I'm not in that scientific aspect of things to know what the hell I'm talking about, but you know, there is a thing there where it is bloodline related, and it is strange. People who have had random experiences there with nothing else behind in their family history, and that it sort of makes you wonder what's so different about those ones there that where they've come across in their bloodlines. Where something wasn't of interest and then all of a sudden is. Have they adapted something in that path of interest? I don't know. I know I'm babbling here, trying to come up with some sort of concepts here, trying to work out what the hell these things are. And that again, it's scary. I as curious as I am to sort of try and get an idea of what happens out there and what these things are and such like that. I sort of don't really want to at the same time because I'm scared of what the hell they are and what they will do.
Oh, 100%. And, people will say to me, Kate, what would be the scariest thing for you to ever run into? And I straight up, alien. If I saw an alien right now, I'd be dead. I'd just had straight up a heart attack. Pop out my chest, I'll be gone because that's just a concept that isn't unfathomable, but it's just too much to handle and comprehend. That great. All control is gone.
Yeah, and you got to hand to the people who have had these experiences there. They've had it lifelong, or they've it could have just something happened in their adulthood. But I think it'd be sort of worse. I'm not sure. If you go from a kid's perspective, you have people think imaginary friends and stuff like that, where you're just seeing things, a common thing that the parents do. Growing up with it, you sort of probably you get used to it, and I suppose you sort of eased into the whole reality of that sort of things. But if you're in someone who has never had an experience, nothing paranormal or any sort of cryptid sort of experience growing up, and then something happens to you one night and you got this full blown memory or glimpses of something that's happened, you're gonna react pretty, you're gonna freak out.
Yeah, absolutely. So hats off to the people who have had these encounters and, continue to live their normal lives and, can't get out of the situations that they're in, but they do the best they can. They're legends, they're heroes in their own worlds. And I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, look, definitely kudos to them because they're the ones that are pretty much holding it together for us.
Yeah,
all the people who 100%. Don't have this,
because it'd be so easy to crack, to be honest.
Oh, it wouldn't it? What? And I think, send me to the loony bin. I think because I'm.
Yep.
I'm not. I'm not going. I can't hold it together here. Look, I'm going through here before we go and finish up here. I'm just trying to go through some because there was some questions here. I'm just trying to figure out where these were. So hi to everyone who has put in the comments there saying g'day and all sorts of stuff. Just going through. Now, there's a weird one because I'm not sure where it was. Oh, don't they harvest our souls as they don't have one? That's a different one. I've never really heard or thought of that.
Well, that's pretty close to what I was saying. That's essentially, would your soul be counted as your consciousness? Does your consciousness live on?
Yeah, that's right. But would they harvest it, or how would they harvest a soul? I suppose we don't understand the souls of what's.
I don't know. Maybe they're like Harry Potter dementors, and they just eat it.
That makes a bit of sense too, and that's sort of going on that Scientology. That they were wrong about that sort of stuff. There were these souls. I'm not full on with the Scientology thing, but I know it was some sort of alien souls thrown into a volcano, and it's
it sounds a little too fabulous for me.
Is that the same concept there? We know harvesting souls are going somewhere and stuff like that. There's a lot of weird stuff that people throw out there. But one of the best ones there, I was talking to Doug Moffat there a couple of weeks ago there, and talking about when we're talking about the history or why these things are visiting us sort of thing. And he brought up a really good concept there where these beings are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years in front of us. And basically what they're doing is they're sort of come back in time to watch as we're progressing. And it's obviously that would have been their timeline at some point. And going, look, this is what we used to be like back in those days,
Yeah, absolutely. I love the time traveler theory when it comes to these things because, if these things travel faster than the speed of light, that hypothetically makes time travel possible.
Yeah. And like, if you think about it too, like, these things have been coming back in our history. They're like, ancient times. They're like, ancient and hieroglyphs, Aztecs and all sorts of stuff. There's been some sort of writing or some sort of evidence there that there has been some sort of beings or crafts being sighted, and whether they were the god figure of their time or whatever, but there's history there saying that these things were back in those days, and
Absolutely,
makes sense on that. So I don't think there is anyway. Lyndon Moulton Howe talks about alien soul harvesting. Okay, I'll have to go and check that one out because it's got me a bit curious on that one there. But yeah, look, I can't, like, we could keep going on for hours here, but I know time gets a bit short for you, and also we've got families to go back to. So, mate, look, thanks very much for coming on the show there, mate. Give us a bit of a blog there before you go, and where people can find you, get contact you, go on your show.
Mate, the best place to find anything related to the Believe Paranormal and UFO podcast is the website. So believepod.com. You can go listen to all the episodes for free on there. But you can also find us on like Apple, Spotify, basically anywhere that has podcast streaming, you'll find the podcasts on there. But yeah, if you do want to be a guest on my podcast, if you had an encounter with paranormal, UFOs, Yowies, all three. I call it the Holy Trinity. If you get all three, you get a special badge. Hit me up. You can contact me through the website, and I'd love to chat with you.
Awesome. That sounds great. Mate, look, again, thanks very much for coming on the show tonight. It was great having this chat again. Like, it's been a while since we've had this good chat, and yeah, I think last time I was a lot more nervous, and a bit more player.
You're a pro now, mate.
I'm not that far yet. No, don't go that. Nowhere near that aspect yet.
It was fantastic coming on, man. It's we genuinely need to do this more often because it was way too long in between drinks, so to say. And I love what you're doing. I think you're killing it with the podcast. You're doing a great service to everyone technically in your niche, and you're a great voice for them.
No, thank you very much, and same to you. You sort of took words out of my mouth there. I was going to say to you, mate. So you beat me to it. But yeah, look, mate, thanks again, mate. It's absolutely awesome, and we're definitely going to have this chat again soon, mate. Look forward to it.
Awesome. Thank you, mate. Right. It's been a pleasure.
Cheers, mate. Yeah. And that will do it, folks, for this episode of Encounters Down Under. I hope you enjoyed the show, and remember, you can also get involved in the show by joining the Facebook page and getting in on the live streams. Also, please be sure to share with your friends and family to help us grow and potentially find our next guest on the show. If you or you know someone who has had an encounter, please get in touch with me through our Facebook page via Messenger or email at australianUFOsightings@outlook.com.au. I look forward to seeing you on the next Encounter Down Under. Hooroo!